Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Getting ready to start the August 23rd Economic Growth and Development Committee. To start up, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the minutes from our prior meeting. Supervisor McGowan, Supervisor McDivitt, thank you. Any additions, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. So to start off, Beth Gillis is here today to give us an update on some of the activities that she's working on. So Beth, if you don't mind.
Thanks everyone for making some time. First of all, thank you for approving our budget last week. The next thing you'll see come through is our fiscal year 2023 allocation request, which we are not asking for an increase for 2023. So less than a year ago, we released our economic recovery plan for our 5-county area, and we organized the issues and actions in 6 economic imperatives, which is kind of how we've been organizing our work lately. So I just wanted to give you some updates on what we've been doing. For broadband, we completed mapping for our northern counties. We decided to go with a third-party data provider. The benefit of this is that they update their maps quarterly. The downside is that they don't have all of the providers in our area, especially the smaller ones that work throughout the Adirondacks. So we've asked them for their data and they've provided it to us. They've all been very cooperative. We decided that that information was useful enough that we've purchased it for Warren and Washington counties as well. And so now we have a $220,000 Northern Border grant for a regional broadband deployment plan. We've contracted with the Development Authority of the North Country. They work on broadband on the western part of the Adirondacks. They have a method to basically drill down to parcel level data of broadband needs. And so we've contracted with them to do that work for us. We were planning on having that done around November. That was before the Reconnect announcement came out. So we're not quite sure if we'll be able to get it done before that goes in, but we will try. Cellular data, we completed dry test data for our northern counties. Again, we've decided that that information is useful enough that we're going to contract to do Warren and Washington counties as well. And we've already engaged some of our federal funding partners and the APA on potential use for that data and improving cellular availability within the Adirondacks Park. Transportation, we are the lead agency on a federal Safe Streets for All application. This is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. There will be $5 billion available within the next 5 years for transportation safety work. But to be able to access that, you have to have a plan that meets the criteria set forth in the act. So we have applied or going to apply for within the next couple weeks a $400,000 grant to do 2 plans. We're going to do our MPO area, and then we'll do a separate plan for Essex, Clinton, and Hamilton counties as well. And we have partnered with AGFTC and New York State DOT on completing that. Water and wastewater, we have a lot of projects going on throughout the region, most notably securing the $7.6 million for the North Creek wastewater system. Childcare access, we are working with a provider not in Warren County on getting a new location so that she can expand her business. We're working through our loan fund and the county's partnering loan fund. And then we're also looking for grants. We're going to apply for some grants to secure money for her operations. For housing access and stability, we secured a $160,000 grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission for an economic analysis of the housing needs in our northern counties. We're calling it Building Balanced Communities for the North Country. And so we've completed the demographic and economic trends, the housing inventory and analysis, and we did an employer survey. We got over 100 responses. So right now we're working on the housing market trends and an elected official roundtable. We're gonna have the data and we've contracted with, we're gonna have the data worked out by the beginning of next year, and we'll start working on recommendations. Even though our focus area is the northern part of our region, we feel that a lot of the recommendations will be able to be used throughout the region. Main streets as economic engines. So we have created the North Country Main Street Reinvestment Program. We secured a $10,000 grant from the Adirondack Foundation to put together a Main Street toolkit, which gives visualizations of best practices. And we've also put together an inventory process to look at existing assets and opportunities and commercial building inventory. We've completed that for 10 communities within our region. And we just secured a $100,000 federal grant to do Main Street economic plans in 3 municipalities in Essex County. And we also secured a $90,000 grant for the town of Johnsburg comp plan, which my staff will be starting soon. The entrepreneurial ecosystem, we've closed 15 loans this year. So that brings our total portfolio to 52 loans totaling 5.7 million in loan capital. Of those, 22 are Warren County businesses totaling almost 3 million in loan capital. Workforce and career building, we just started a couple weeks ago, a joint effort with AGFTC and GGFT on a rural workforce transportation plan. And so we really want to drill down on the movement of the rural workforce within Warren and Washington counties. So we're going to put a really concerted effort into analyzing the data and then trying to look at solutions beyond kind of the usual list that you see. So tying this all together, we have regional data dashboards on our website now. And so we have a community dashboard with demographic information. We have a housing dashboard, which has units, owners, renters, mortgage and rent burden information. We have an economy dashboard and school enrollment by district dashboard. And Sarah did that work for us. And it's awesome. And I really encourage you all to check it out. In other news, in our water quality program, we completed the drinking water source protection plan for Lake George. This is a joint DEC, DOH, and regional planning board effort to look at vulnerabilities in drinking water watersheds and determine ways to address them. So we're completed with Lake George. We're about halfway through the village of Argyle, and our next one will be the town of Bolin. We are currently finishing up the Lake George action plan, and we secured a $7,000 grant for the Warren County Septic Smart program. And we secured a $285,000 WQIP grant for roadside erosion reduction projects. It's a regional project, but $63,500 of that is for Warren County projects. And just to end, our staff, my staff, completed 22 CFA applications this year, totaling 6.3 million in funding asks from 5 state agencies. And 5 were Warren County specific projects and 2 were regional. That would include Warren County if they were awarded. Questions?
Thank you, Beth. That's a
Beth.
lot of work. Would you mind sending an email out to the committee if you don't mind, and in terms of just reviewing all your activities? I think that's amazing. Any questions from the committee for Beth?
Beth mentioned childcare and the fact that I didn't follow that, the fact that you're not using a provider in Warren County. Kind of back up on that a little bit.
So we had originally started to try to work on a regional program for childcare and decided that that wasn't really going to move the needle at all. So we drilled it back. There's one specific provider that we're working with right now. They're not in Warren County, but we're working out how to utilize our loan fund and state resources that are out there to help childcare providers either expand out of their homes or start up. So we've got one, just kind of our pilot, and we're trying to figure it out.
Thank you.
Along those lines, Beth, are you working with Liza and our childcare team here in Warren County also?
We've spoken to
Lynn Stickles?
Yes, Lynn, thank you.
Thank you.
Totally went blank on that. Yeah, we actually spoke to Lynn about kind of that regional approach. And so we've spoken to the childcare coordinating network of the North Country as well. Her counterpart up in Clinton County. So yeah, we're aware of what they're doing and they're aware of what we're trying to do.
Excellent. Any other questions? Supervisor Stroud?
Not so much a question as a point. Today at 2 o'clock is the Lake George Action Plan discussion hearing, 2 o'clock. I mentioned that because my government ops committee people, we are at 1:30, 2 o'clock, the Lake George Action Plan. So let's try and hurry that agenda. Okay.
Allison's completed the draft and we're presenting it to the committee today at 2 o'clock.
Anything else from the committee? Thank you, Beth. Supervisor Stroud, I will do my best. Wayne, you're up.
Well, I will do my best to move things along. The agenda was mailed out or provided to the committee members. We have 4 items on the agenda for committee consideration. Item number 1, I'm actually asking to remove from the agenda. Due to our extreme efficiency, we already did this in resolution 202 of this year. So this was a repeat So that one's, I'd remove that from the agenda, please. The second item is to establish a capital fund for the septic replacement program round 3. As most of you are probably aware, the county was awarded another $595,000 for septic replacement program along the lakeshore of Lake George. This is to establish the capital fund to administer those funds.
We have a motion to move this forward. Supervisor Stroud, seconded by Brad McCowan. Supervisor McCowan, any questions, comments? Call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, just as a further, we have 55 applications on file from the previous award that were not addressed, so we'll be working through those to start. Agenda item number 3 is amend the department's revenue codes to allow for billing back to the ARPA administration award through the ARPA funds. Resolution 260, 370 some odd thousand was allocated over a 4-year program to the department to offset administration costs. We build to that, and then we're informed by the treasurer's office that we need to increase our revenue codes to reflect that money coming in. So that is what you have before you.
All right, another motion to bring this forward. Supervisor McGowan, Supervisor McDivitt on the second. Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item number 4 is just to extend the contract end date for another year from the New York State Information Technology for the ortho imagery. It's not going to take a year. If you look at the agreement that's in the back of the agenda, they are looking for payment sometime around February, but in order to carry, we have a purchase order out for that, but in order to carry it forward, they've requested a year extension on the agreement. I don't see any problem with that. We're still going to get our deliverable when we need it. One of the things I will point out is the county allocated $86,200 for this. If you look on page 2 of the contract, which is, we never really had a contract document before to this extent, they're listing it as $66,000. So hopefully that's what the final bill would be, but their initial letter to us was for $86,200. Sarah did some maneuvering with some additional properties, and we actually added some properties, or Sarah added some properties to it, which actually reduced the per parcel rate or per square mile rate. So we got more for less. So I'd ask the committee's consideration to authorize extension of that contract agreement at the request of New York State.
Need a motion and second. Supervisor Stroud on the first, Supervisor McGowan on the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Sorry.
Question. This is for enhanced resolution.
Yes, so this is for photography that was flown in April. And it is enhanced resolution over the typical 2-meter resolution that I think they usually fly. So we should be getting delivery of this hopefully in the fall, sometime in the next 4 months, I would estimate. We'll see it. So.
Any other questions? Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. This is for Ethan. Ethan, you know where I'm going. Number 2, on this established capital project for the sector round 3, which is excellent news. The people have to reapply, or the people that have already applied that didn't make it on the first round, and some people that have already upgraded. If they have already upgraded, will they still be eligible for this?
We are going to be addressing the backlog, but we need to look at the updated program guidelines, if any, that we get from the state. They've announced the award in terms of reimbursing people for projects that were already completed. We need to.
Like this one was just finished a month ago, and he just missed, and we've talked about it.
Yep.
You know, he was all prepared. He had
yeah,
everything in there, and he only missed it by a couple.
Yep.
A couple things, but I mean, we talked about that. You know, he couldn't wait any further.
Yep.
Than what he had to do, and it ended up being really an extensive. So I mean, whatever we could do to help out, but I mean, it was a good project. But
Yeah, I think we should have a clear answer when we get any updated language from the state.
Not gonna go over well.
If all his receipts predate the award date of the funding, it's not gonna be eligible. We cannot, the state authorized a period, and it'll begin with the contract date or the award date. And it's,
So when did we get
Supervisor
round two
McGowan?
in there? If we're on round three.
Brad, excuse me, we're on to a different motion. So can we take that offline? Because I've got to hustle to get this done by 2:00. So we do have a motion on the floor for the New York State imagery. And we have a second. Going to call a question. All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? That's carried. So Brad, I know that's important, but we need to kind of move forward quickly because we've already passed that resolution. Any other questions, comments? Wayne, discussion items, nothing on the agenda?
the only thing I want to bring up is that yesterday we were notified of Northern Borders Award, total program of 200,000. The county was awarded 160,000. Ethan did a great job putting an application together, Northern Borders, for additional work with assessment of the bikeway in connection to the Empire State Trail and Feeder Canal Trail, with connection to City of Glens Falls. And so we're waiting for the official paperwork on that, but I just wanted to apprise the committee of that award and just say Ethan did a good job.
So I was going to move on to the next one. Liza, unless there are any other questions for Wayne and his team. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Wild. I have several resolution requests today, and I know we're on a time crunch, so I'll try to move quickly. And then I'll provide some general updates as well. The first resolution request you have is to replace Michael Biddle on our workforce board with the new ARCC president, Trisha Rogers, and Michael Biddle did provide a nomination letter in the format of an email for Trisha to take his place, and Trisha is willing. So that is the first resolution request.
Moved by Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call that question. All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. The second resolution request is to appoint Mrs. Elizabeth Miller to the Workforce Development Board for a 3-year term. This seat was not filled by somebody else before. It was an optional seat. But the executive director of the board and myself really feel like Mrs. Miller's experience owning several businesses in our county and having more than 50 employees, and as a property owner, we feel like her experience and knowledge would be very valuable to our workforce board.
Supervisor Stroud with the first, Supervisor McGowan, second. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you. The third resolution request is to renew our contract with BOCES for our GED classes, for our youth GED classes up to age 24. And you have that contract in front of you. The only thing different from last year is it's about $1,000 more. It is completely federally funded through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act.
First by Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's carried also.
Thank you. The fourth resolution request is to create a new position in my department, the Student to Careers Program Specialist. This position was approved by ARPA for funding to cover it, and it will help us ensure that more students are receiving a career exploration program and services in our school districts in Warren County, so we can pipeline more younger people to our local in-demand industries. You have the job description with you, and I believe Interim Administrator Leggett received the intent to fill form. And that is a grade 14, and HR's recommendation was around $50,000 salary. So 4 and 5 kind of go together, if that's okay.
Yeah, move 4 and 5.
Moved by Supervisor Strauss, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions?
I have a question.
Supervisor Hogan, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Liza.
Hey there.
So remind me, ARPA will fund this position for how long?
Through 2026, and that amount was $250,000 that was approved and allocated.
Okay. And what's the plan beyond then?
We will see when, I do want to see what the outcomes are and be able to show that. I also anticipate that our Wioa dollars will continue to increase. We did get a bump this year, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But also my federal grant that funds my salary in my department is renewed every 3 years. So these are a lot of, there's a lot of programs and positions that rely on grant funding. And I think we just have to see the return on investment and then look at what grant and general fund money is available after we see the outcomes.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That was a nice little football pass. I've said it before, I would like to see us starting to make some plans for general fund planning to workforce development. We are not investing enough in this. Thanks.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Resolution request number 6 is to transfer funds from our dislocated worker bucket, so to speak, to adults. This is a general housekeeping item that we do in every spring and summer from our previous program year. As a friendly reminder, our program year is July 1 to June 30th, and we are able to use our funds, carryover funds. So we can use our funds for up to 18 months. So we have already received approval from our board and New York State to transfer $20,000 from dislocated worker to adult. And the reason is because every dislocated worker is an adult, but not every adult is a dislocated worker. So this is a standard housekeeping item that job centers do across our state.
Mr. McGowan on the motion, Mr. McDevitt on the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? And that's carried.
Thank you. And resolution request number 7 is to amend the budget to receive our annual allocation from the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, Wioa, for program year 2022, which just started July 1. Normally, we do not see this funding until the fall, so it has come earlier this year and we do need to start using it. So you do have a budget in front of you. I passed out a little bit of a bigger copy than the one you received in your initial packet, if that's easier to read through. We did receive about $52,000 more this year than last year. However, due to inflation and other reasons, our expenses have also gone up for contracts, as you know, health insurance, and even our memberships to some of the state agencies, state organizations, those membership dues have also gone up. So that $50,000 extra is very helpful, but it will be used.
So I need a motion and a second. Supervisor Stroud on the motion, McGowan on the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried also.
Thank you. Resolution request number 8 is to update my department name to the Department of Workforce Development. I have shared this information with the committee before. You have the previous resolution from 1983. So our current title of employment and training is 40 years old. And we are looking to update the name of our department so that it more aligns with the scope of the work. And also because we are not the unemployment office and we are building a lot of workforce development programs.
Motion by Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That carries also. Thank you, Liza.
Thank you. And you have a new handout in front of you that was not on the original agenda. We are partnering with the Salvation Army on Broad Street in Glens Falls for a number of new programs, but we would love to use their classroom space for our GED class. In the past, our GED class was at our Career Center, and then during COVID, when our state center was closed, it was at the synagogue on Bay Street. And now we're looking at utilizing the Salvation Army because they have immaculate classroom spaces with everything that we need, but also because our young people in that class can have access to additional services there at the Salvation Army, food pantry, social workers, men's groups, et cetera. It's really a one-stop shop. And we continue to work with the Salvation Army on a number of workforce initiatives. And this just is to start a new contract with them for using their classroom space. They're only charging us $10 an hour. And the contract would be up to $5,000 a year.
A motion in a second. Supervisor McKibben on the motion, Supervisor Strow on the second. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank
That's it.
you. And lastly, and thank you so much for approving all of those requests. I really appreciate it. Lastly, I just wanted to share some general updates since our summer tourism season is winding down. We are still at an unemployment rate of 3%. We do see an increase usually in the winter. And that is why we are working diligently to make sure that we have people who are looking for winter work. Some of you received an invitation from me to our workforce celebration that will be at Six Flags on September 12th. The idea behind this, and I had this plan last year, but it didn't go through. We needed more coordination and collaboration. But this year, Six Flags Great Escape has graciously offered to cover the tickets and snacks for our summer tourism, hospitality, and retail workforce. And we will do awards that evening. This is September 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. The save the date is already out there. But in addition to that, my goal is to have several winter employers tabled at that event. So it's a soft handoff if anybody is looking for winter work. In the past, we have a small segment of our population who takes unemployment in the winter and works in the summer. We cannot afford to do that anymore. The state is about $8 billion in debt from unemployment to the feds. And if we're transitioning to 365 tourism, we need our workers. As you've heard many times, we have a demographic drought and we will continue to have a workforce shortage. So it is very important that we are making sure our employers are aware as well, because we have employers who tell their employees, go ahead and take unemployment for 4 or 5 months, I'll rehire you. I am starting now with some messaging to our employers that those employees will come back to you with more skills and experiences, and we need to incentivize that and celebrate that and keep them working year round. So all of this is in collaboration with Great Escape Six Flags, as well as our local hospitality, tourism, and retail businesses. And I am super excited about that, and I hope some of you will be able to join us that evening. Again, it's September 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. Any questions about that? Many of you were at our Summer Youth Employment Program celebration, and I want to thank you again for coming. We had a record number of youth and work sites participating. We had many returning work sites, which was wonderful. And some of those young people have been offered additional work, which is fantastic. That is the goal. And some of them were returning, of course, from previous years. We also had many youth with special needs this year. So again, I want to thank the ARPA committee for their funding that helped us hire a job coach for the summer to work with our youth with special needs, or they would not have been able to be a part of our workforce program this summer. So I just want to thank those of you on the ARPA committee as well for that. For childcare, we are, myself and Lynn at Southern Adirondack Child Care Network, we're finalizing the paperwork that has to be submitted in order to receive our federal community project money that was already allocated to us. There were 8 webinars and to watch and documents to do in order to receive the money that's already been allocated. So we're working on that. We're also working closely with EDC to figure out what additional gaps around childcare still exist. We want to show folks these are the resources and services that already exist, and then we still have additional gaps. We want to make sure that the business community is a part of the solution as well, with private or business donations to build a childcare sustainability fund for Warren County childcare providers. We're also looking at ways that not only
because a lot of our funding is for home-based providers, but how else we can open more centers and for little or no cost leases, whether it's in basement churches or other human service agencies. So the work is nonstop. It's really busy, but all good things. And those were my main updates today, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions from the committee? None today. Thank you, Liza, as always. Mr. Siplan.
Efficient. 9 resolutions in record time.
Jam.
Mr. Stroud has the ability to influence.
Brad.
Your agenda. But that's the date.
Peter? Would you like to sit in for a minute while I deal with the?
So I wanted to provide you a brief update. This is much shorter than our typical update. But one of the things that before I get started, I wanted to say is today is an example, I think, of Warren County at its best. You know, everybody who's talked to you before, whether it's Beth, Wayne's organization, Liza, or us, we have all interacted with each other lots of times since the last time we saw you. These groups are not only interdependent, but they're working effectively for the benefit of everybody here. And you hear all these various interactions that are talked about. That all comes about because I think of a spirit that was birthed perhaps during the pandemic of how do we work together, but continues to survive and provide value. And I'm grateful to Beth and her staff, certainly to Liza and the tireless work that she and everyone that works with her does, certainly Wayne, Ethan, everybody in the planning group, Sarah. It's just it's a wonderful ecosystem to work in. If you just look at the first chart, I've covered this before, but I wanted to remind everybody because it underlies everything you heard from everyone else. It used to be that we focused on how to get a company here. It's just not what we do right now. The companies themselves are looking for people. They follow workforce. Now, I won't say that's universal. I mean, it took a CHIP Act and billions of dollars in order for us to get the development, the further development of, say, the chip fab down in Malta. But if you look at the scale of business that comes to places like Warren County, it is no longer about solely going out and putting a sign up saying, here are our economic incentives. We hope for company X to come. They simply ask one question, which is, can you show me your workforce? And if there's a workforce here that is skilled and available, there will be droves of companies that look to locate here. And if we can't step into that, then we, like everyone else, will fight to land them. Now, increasingly, those companies are also individuals. Sometimes an individual represents somebody who works for a company and works on their own. All of them represent economic value. But our model has shifted. We now need to focus on how we make this place both attractive and also accessible to people who want to be here. We are in a war for talent. We're in a war for talent with Saratoga. We're in a war for talent with Troy. We're in a war for talent with Burlington, Vermont. People have choices about where they go. And the placemaking that we invest in is fundamental to whether or not we will win at that. And as you've heard Liza and others refer to, our demographics are moving away from us. We continue to get older and more insulated. If we do not bring in new workers, that problem only gets worse over time. So you see us involved in a series of things, just like every other group that you heard from before today, that maybe are beyond the scope of what we have traditionally done. But this is why. We could skip to the next chart, but this is the fundamentals behind it. This is what drove us to broadband. And I just want to remind everybody about where we stand on it. Beth and her organization are doing a wonderful job, I think, of trying to expand the entire broadband coverage across the north. But it's important to understand that Warren County is in a unique and strong position here. In 2018, by at least the best data that I could draw, I sat down, I think in one of my very first meetings with Kevin and with Mike Wild and others when I took the job. There were thousands in Warren County that did not meet a modern broadband standard. As best I could see, it was at least 3,500, and it might have been more than that. And yet, by the federal guidelines and even by the state guidelines, we were even then wildly successful. 80% of the county was largely covered. That's a function of the fact that the majority of people in the county live in Queensbury and Glens Falls, and they had infrastructure in place. But the further you got away from there, the harder the story got. This really is about figuring out how to expand that economic opportunity to all reaches of the county. Today, we have roughly 500 left. There's still some work to do here. I do not want to declare victory, but that's a big change. I mean, in a place that has 25,000 households, to be essentially able to draw more than 10% of them in over that period of time without further investment by the county, I think is a template that we want to take notice of. It's not just the fact that we were involved in it. We were involved with it with a whole variety of people. Like we could never have done what we did without Beth and her team. We certainly could never have done it without Sarah and the planning group. But the point though, is that this is, if we can figure out how to capture this idea and reapply it, it will be really effective for us. Today, more than 90% of the households in Warren County meet that threshold, which essentially puts us on par with any county outside of New York City in New York. That's a great place to be. More than 200 miles of fiber have been added, but there's still work to be done. And I want to make sure that people don't declare victory too early here. The vast majority, and I mean vast majority, more than 80% of our residents have one choice. That lack of choice is not going to serve us well in the long run. We need to continue to inspire more investment by more carriers here, to create more fiber, to create more modern technology. It will continue to help us, and it will also continue to help the entire North. Because as we're able to effectively work those things into the fabric here, it becomes a template that can be applied to increasingly more rural counties to the north. And in fact, the North Country Broadband Alliance, which many of the organizations I've talked to participate in, and the EDC actually facilitates every single week, meets week after week, even though we're at this 90% standard, mostly because we want to not only continue to drive progress here, but we want all of the areas that surround us to also be able to grow into this level of adoption. When Essex County has a healthier broadband population and penetration, it will accrue benefit not only to them, but to the entire region and disproportionately to us. The healthcare that they disproportionately receive comes from Warren County. The professional services that are needed in a place like Essex County come disproportionately from Warren County. This is why it's in our interest to stay on this. And I applaud you guys as a committee for continuing to do it, even though we're in a really strong position. If we flip to the next chart, I want to take that same approach and I want to apply it to housing. I think you've heard from everybody that talked up here, even Liza to some degree, about the need for housing. This is going to require everybody in their unique role playing the part they play, and all of us figuring out how to fill gaps that we've never really explored before. So let's talk a little bit about what's already happening. The planning department here at the county uncovered an opportunity to participate in something called the New York University Housing Solutions Laboratory. They passed that on to a number of entities, including us, that are involved in the effort. We wound up leading the application. Sometimes it's Beth that leads the application. Sometimes it's the planning group that leads the application. Doesn't really matter. Whoever's best positioned to go after it does. And then we figure out how to take advantage of that opportunity for the benefit of all. So there will be members on that group that we've applied for if we're successfully able to manage through that process and be chosen from the planning department. There will be somebody from the Queensbury Planning Authority or the Queensbury Planning staff. There will be somebody from Glens Falls, and then the EDC will participate as well. It's an example of how this works. In addition to that, we are going to continue to host more and more forums. These are not competitive forums. I think Beth's got a great planning conference scheduled for later this fall. She's really talking primarily to many of the planning professionals that work in our municipalities. But beyond that, we're also trying to educate a public that doesn't necessarily understand that they need more housing. They don't necessarily want it. We got to help them understand why, if we don't get it, there won't be a cardiologist to take care of them when they need it. There won't be a sustainable economy. There won't be a school that has a population that can support continuing to stay in existence. All of these things require more housing, but we got to get everyone to understand it. That's a big part of the role we play. In addition, Lake George has got an ambitious project underway to try to figure out how to get significant additional housing capacity for seasonal and J1 housing or tourist workers. We're 100% in place with them, trying to figure out how we can help them. This is not to supplant them. It's to, it's to create additional capability on top of what they're already able to bring. Dan Baruch and his team, I think, could do this on their own. But the opportunity to also talk about how that could benefit other communities, how that could benefit other needs, how we could potentially use that as a template to expand is the part that we play. Many of you participated in our forum earlier this summer where we talked about the demographic drought, and I'm proud to hear the people like Liza and others refer to that all the time. This is underlying data that everyone needs to understand in order to figure out why we're doing what we're doing. We got to do more of that. In fact, we've talked to the authors of that study about coming back this winter and offering a second and a third iteration to help us understand more about that problem and more about the effective strategies to deal with it. We act as the connection between this area and a lot of other things that are going on around housing. Supervisor Leggett and I both served in a capacity of connecting us to the land bank efforts that were being researched by a number of entities in the North Country. In addition to that, the LDC is constantly exploring whether or not it can be utilized to support any of the gaps that develop around housing, or even to encourage housing as a specific investable category that the LDC could undertake. We're a funder and a partner with the Warren County Housing Study, which is underway in terms of its RFP development and hopefully will be launched later this year. And then there's research going on in our office. I introduced you to Mike Schrammel in a previous meeting. He's a graduate student in applied economics, and he's literally doing net new research on not just the economic value of clean water to the tourism world, but what does it matter that clean water exists in Lake George to a business that is 30 miles away. That work has never really been done. In addition, he gave me some research today that I found fascinating on the value of housing to our region. I'm going to share with you some information that he provided to me this morning based on an exhaustive literature review and then some specific applied economic analysis that he did. That 10% increase in broadband that I showed you over the last handful of years, I asked him a question of what was that worth? And he dug deep into a series of different data sources around things like household income that came from not only the census, but a number of other places. And what he discovered is that for every 10% increase that a community our size is able to get in terms of broadband penetration, that turns into $650 worth of additional GDP contribution from that new connection. Let's put that in different terms. If we look at those thousands of people that have been connected, that has produced more than $40 million worth of overall economic benefit to the region. And this is not our estimate. This is based on data that others have done, or analysis others have done and simply applied to our population. Let's put that in terms that are easier for us to understand. Our effective tax rate, if you look at all of the sources that we tax, whether it's property taxes, OC tax, sales tax, all the variety of mechanisms that we have for deriving revenue as a county. Let's imagine it's just 1%. It's actually higher than that, but let's imagine just 1%. That additional 10% produced $500,000 worth of taxable revenue each year. That is the definition of economic development. What we did was connect somebody to the internet. What happened is they then turned that into economic value. They were able to take a job they weren't able to take before, or participate in work that they weren't able to do before. They were able to spend less money on procuring healthcare than they had to before. They were able to keep their kids in school without the disruption that comes from them having to figure out how to connect, find a way for them to connect to the resources they need. When you put all those things together, that generated real value to every single household and to this county. And we can actually watch it walk all the way through. Now, we're going to talk about more of this as we enter into the budget cycle this year. I'm going to share that data as much as anybody would like to go through it. But I find it exciting when we uncover stuff like this. We're not quite sure whether what we did, we know it produced some good value, but we're not quite sure how to put a real figure on that. And the ability for us to now have the resources that help us figure out exactly what was that worth. That's exciting to me. All right, the last thing I wanted to point out to you is there's a couple of things going on in the business world that, you may already know, but I want to remind you of. Brookfield is going to do a opening of or a ribbon cutting for their new operations center in Queensbury in the month of September. So more details will come out on it, but this is very exciting. These guys have relocated and consolidated more than 50 jobs from across upper New England into this area. Now, we're struggling to find workers just like everybody else, but it also tells you when somebody commits millions of dollars to go concentrate them, the problem's worse in other places. We're winning when this happens. Many of you were at the Adirondack Wineries open house, but I think that's another exciting story. They came out of the ecosystem of economic support that we talked about. Nettle Meadows is having their ribbon cutting at the Lake Luzerne facility this week. It's an exciting opportunity to come see a business that literally went from nothing to being a driver in our local economy in a matter of years. And every bit of that was supported with the county, supported by the planning board, supported by the LDC, all of the pieces working together to create a success story. Hudson Headwaters Glens Falls construction continues dramatically. That's a giant addition to their constellation of services, the center that they're building just across the line in Glens Falls. It's going to deliver support for those with brain and mental disabilities that are associated with aging for the entire North Country. This is going to become a nexus for a new range of care. Kirsch Helmets, their market continues to expand. I'm excited to see the work that they're doing. They're out seeking more investment from across the region. It's a great sign for us. I know Andres and others have talked about the work around the North Creek Sewer, which we've been trying to support. And that in addition supports the $25 million, which is going to be invested in the ski bowl expansion. And of course, if a septic a wastewater system is created there, the opportunity to create lodging that does not exist, an economic expansion we've never had before, is sitting right in front of us. A corner of our county is on the edge of having opportunities that they've never had before. And then I mentioned some of this work about novel economic research that we're doing. We continue to do the childcare work in conjunction with many of the people you talked about, including Liza and Lynn Sickles. And another thing that's really important that we not forget is that public transportation is an important connector to all of this. As we develop housing strategy, figuring out where we can do that in a way that will most gracefully allow connection to public transportation will make that the most effective investment we can have, which means we're finding our way into many of those meetings as well. That's everything I had, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to let the committee know that Supervisor Stroud can't start until 1:35. So we do have opportunities for questions for Jim or from anyone else. So are there any questions from the committee? No questions. Liza.
Thank you, Chairman. I was kind of rushing through my agenda to make sure everybody had time to speak, but I just wanted to bring back up Supervisor Hogan's point, especially since this committee also last month talked about tabling it until next month regarding investing in my department, workforce development. So since we have some time, I wondered if folks wanted to talk about that because we are completely funded by federal dollars, both the Wioa grant and ARPA money, and not one county dollar.
Well, I think most of you know that I'm in support of trying to do something like that. And I do see our budget officer in the back. To get a sense, maybe, Frank, if I could ask you for some input in terms of whether we can afford this coming year to support Liza and her team with some additional funding.
Yeah, I think we can. It's on my list. I know it's between 200 and 500,000. I think that will land somewhere in there. Hopefully it'll be the 500, but I don't know.
Just for the public and those that couldn't hear Supervisor Thomas and our budget officer, he did say that we could afford $500,000 to make this happen. And a few other things he said. So any thoughts from the committee?
How do we pass a resolution along to budget or to finance? I don't know which one it goes to. What's the process for that?
That's a really good question. Do we have any thoughts or comments? So the suggestion was to make a referral to the budget committee. Supervisor McGowan in support of that. Supervisor McDivitt. Any thoughts, questions? That's easy. Thank you, Frank. Liza,
Thank you.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it back up.
Supervisor, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor of that motion? To,
Aye.
thank you. very
Aye.
much. Opposed? Seeing none, that carries also. Supervisor Hogan, since we have a couple of minutes, could you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but could you give us an update on what's happening with your sewer project and what's going on to help make that happen? Because I think everyone here realizes the opportunity that's there and also realizes that you have some challenges still ahead of you. Is there anything that you'd like to enlighten us on or something that we might be able to help with?
Well, I think I spoke to ARPA committee when I said it. I need everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction. Any opportunity anyone has to positively message the need for a wastewater treatment system in North Creek is incredibly important from now until October 18th. On the 18th of October, we will be holding a special vote in the town. It will be a vote of only the participants in the district. The district is very, very small to begin with. It will have approximately 65 people eligible to vote. 1/3 of those roughly are people who reside outside of town. Because of that, the board voted last week, the town board voted last week to allow a absentee component to our vote, which triggered this unbelievably complex series of events in which people will have to register in person in order to then apply to be an absentee voter. So I don't know, as we addressed the problem of 1/3 of the people being out of the district with that, but we are trying very, very hard to move forward with as fair a process and allowing for as many people who will be impacted to have something to say about it. Right now, we are challenged by headwinds of concerns over the cost of the district. We've gotten more than half of it funded through grants. The remainder, though, is still almost $4 million, and that will have to be borne by the 65 distinct entities within the district. Some obviously will pay a lot more than others. We have the old copper field, it's called the Phoenix now. They will need to pay more to be on it. The potential Orta Lodge is dependent on it at this point. Front Street would hook up to it. The town facilities within Ski Bowl Park, the nursing home is a big one. And there are some small business owners within the district. So who understandably, I mean, right now they've got a septic system. It's working just fine. They're not putting much money into it. We have lovely sandy soil. So I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people that, I've got a septic system. It's 40 years old and I've never done anything to it, but it works great. I mean, we all kind of know what that is, but it's hard to convince somebody who's got that situation to then want to cough up an additional $600, $1,200 or $1,800 a year to hook up to a sewer system. So we're trying to come at it from not only, a public health point of view, but also, it is absolutely intrinsic to economic development along our main street. Unfortunately, that's just not a message a lot of people really care to hear. So if anybody has any opportunity to help us get that information out there, that, with lots of very small lot sizes and lovely sandy soil, we probably have a lot of failing septic systems that need to be picked up by a sewer, as well as the ability to expand some of these businesses beyond what they're doing right now. I mean, I can say for sure Izzy's Deli has been told they can't have more tables, that they have to watch their mix between what they serve and what they sell retail. They have to keep that at roughly 50-50. If they go further with their food service, then they will be in violation of Department of Health stuff. We've had one circumstance where a gentleman who has an apartment building, his leach field just can't, there isn't enough land for a leach field that's big enough. So we've had septic stuff bubbling down over our beautiful mosaic wall. He's put over $9,000 into his system in the last year, and it still isn't fixed. But it always happens on a Sunday, and I can't get the DEC to come and document it. So that's one problem. It's, we don't have any consent order like Lake George, and we don't really want a consent order, but it might help to have a consent order. But anyway, anybody has any influence to help get people to understand that we need this system in order to move forward as a community would be really, really helpful. And thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. It's sounds like a challenge. And I'm not sure what we can do. Jim?
So we've been trying to help her and the community through the entire process, at least since I've been there. And one of the things I think we want to continue to do is be nimble to the problems that may present themselves if the sewer district is formed and new challenges show up. And I think whether that's the LDC, the EDC, or any of the entities that are in the room, I think getting through that vote is step one of a multi-step process. The goal here is to not only treat wastewater, but it's to make sure that this process is successful so that the economic opportunity can be recognized. And I'm sure there's going to be the need, potentially, for instance, of a fund that would either help businesses that are struggling to stay connected to the system and utilize it, or to connect net new businesses, because that connection fee may turn out to be prohibitive. And we may want to look at how we can make funds available as we have with, say, septic upgrades. But I think what we need to do is stay close enough to be able to say, yes, we will explore that, and yes, we will find a way to help. It is in the interest of every resident of Warren County that this happen, not just because it's good for North Creek, but because it will generate economic value for the entire county. So we have, if you will, we have some reason to care.
I do agree. And with the expansion of Gore, it creates significant opportunities to expand our winter tourism. And I'm not sure where we can go with this. I'd love to see a motion to say that we need to do everything within our power to support the creation of this sewer district. But I'm not sure what our power is.
I think a resolution of support before October is a good thing. My own experience from being out there is, there are some people who welcome that and some people who don't, but I definitely think we should let everybody know that this is something everyone else does know about and does care about and is prepared, I think, to come in and help backstop. I think that may help.
Yep. Thank you, Jim.
Can we get a motion from the committee? Supervisor McDevitt? Second. Supervisor Stroud? Questions, comments? The resolution is to provide our message of support for the creation of the sewer district within Johnsburg and the benefits that would provide not only to that town, but the surrounding region and to Warren County as a whole.
Amen.
Does that make
That's good.
pass through the committee?
Great.
Did we vote on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That has carried. Thank you, everyone. And
Thank
we still have 5 minutes before Mr. Stroud takes over. So I'm going to open it up to the floor one more time to see if there's anything else we should discuss today. Mr. McDowell.
Yes, would we be able to go back with my discussion with the grant?
If we have 2 minutes, go right ahead.
Yeah, on this particular one that we're talking about, he applied for the grant, just missed the last cutoff. He was all prepared. He had all his permits. He had everything ready to rock and roll, and needed to get it done. He missed the opportunity on this grant by really, I want to say like maybe by 15 applications. But what I have found out is that there have been other grants that were issued were people who just said, I would like to apply for this grant and had nothing in place. So meanwhile, this septic was just completed, I believe, the end of June, 1st of July. And from my previous talkings, I thought that, some of the applications that were already in there would have been carried by the new fund program, but I was just informed today it's not going to happen. Is that correct, Wayne? I'm
Right?
not putting you under the gun.
No.
Let's put this, I want that on the record.
Right now, we went through the process of taking applications and addressing those on a first come, first served basis. The funding round that we had before was $340,000, $360,000. And that was fully committed months ago, a year ago. There are currently 55 applications on file, of which probably the person you're talking about is probably one of those. What we have right now is a secondary funding award, as we mentioned this morning. The letter on that is dated July 25th. What the contract date actually will be remains to be seen. Sometimes the state will backdate stuff till April 1st, which is the state fiscal year. However, there are program criteria of which this person probably would meet for design standards, an engineer to sign off on it, a town to sign off on it. So we'll look at it. If there's a way to maybe shuffle some people around, we'll look at it. That's all I can say.
That's all I hope for. Thank you, Wayne. And like I said, I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all.
Oh, of course not.
I just know the phone is going to start ringing once I hear this out of all the people that have been waiting. So.
With that, I'll call a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.